My name is Emily Chan. I'm a software engineer now working at a place I once only dreamed of, a place where innovation isn't just a buzzword, it's the air we breathe. I've built a life for myself, a life filled with purpose and finally peace. But the path here, it was paved with a kind of heartbreak I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I just discovered the real reason why my own parents treated me like a ghost in their perfectly curated lives, and let me tell you the truth, is a venomous snake that had been coiled at the heart of my family for decades. They thought I'd never uncover the truth about why I was an afterthought, a footnote in their glamorous story. They thought I was too young to understand the whispers, too broken to fight back. They were wrong. For years, I carried the weight of their indifference, a silence so heavy it threatened to suffocate me. I questioned my worth, my very existence. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering what was so fundamentally unlovable about me. This isn't just a story about neglect, it's about the devastating power of secrets and the incredible strength you find when you're forced to rebuild yourself from the ashes. There are multiple truths that will be revealed in this story, truths that unraveled a family tapestry woven with lies. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been made to feel like a burden, comment below and subscribe. I want you to know you're not alone. Trust me, if you've ever craved acceptance or fought for your dreams against all odds, this story will change how you see family and perhaps even yourself forever. My earliest memories aren't of my biological parents, Marcus and Sophia Chan. They are of warm, flower-dusted hands guiding mine as I learned to fold dumplings, the comforting scent of wood polish and old books, and the gentle rumble of Grandpa Harold's laughter. Emily Chan was raised in a small, cozy brownstone in Park Slope, Brooklyn, a world away from the glittering, sterile skyscraper apartments my parents called home in Manhattan. My grandparents, Harold and May Wong, were my universe. Grandpa Harold was a retired structural engineer, a man whose quiet strength and meticulous nature found a second life in his passion project, Wong's Wooden Wonders. His small furniture store on the ground floor of our brownstone wasn't just a business. It was a sanctuary filled with handcrafted treasures, each piece imbued with his love and dedication. He'd let me watch him work for hours, his gnarled hands transforming rough blocks of wood into smooth, elegant chairs and tables. He taught me the beauty of precision, the importance of a solid foundation, lessons that resonated far beyond woodworking. He had a quiet wisdom, his eyes often crinkling at the corners, with a knowing smile that made me feel seen and cherished. Grandma May was his perfect complement. A retired teacher, she was a whirlwind of energy and stories. Her voice, warm and melodic, filled our home with tales of ancient myths, brave heroines, and far-off lands. She nurtured my imagination, fostered my love for reading, and patiently answered my endless stream of questions. She saw the spark in me, the curiosity that my parents either missed or chose to ignore. While they were busy climbing their respective corporate ladders, Marcus, a high-powered lawyer whose name was synonymous with ruthless efficiency, and Sophia, a renowned architect whose designs graced magazine covers, Grandma May was teaching me how to code on an old computer Grandpa Harold had salvaged, fanning the flames of what would become my lifelong passion for technology. My parents, well, they were like distant, dazzling stars, beautiful to look at from afar, but too remote to offer any warmth. They'd make fleeting appearances for birthdays or major holidays, bearing expensive impersonal gifts that felt more like transactions than tokens of affection. I remember a particularly stark example when I was 7. I'd spent weeks working on a hand-drawn storybook for my mother's birthday filled with fantastical creatures and a heroine who looked suspiciously like her. When I presented it, Sophia glanced at it distractedly, offered a tight smile, and said, "That's Creative Emily. Now run along. Mommy has a very important call." The book later ended up in a forgotten pile of mail. Grandpa Harold found it, his face etched with a sadness I didn't fully understand then. He framed my favorite drawing from it and hung it in his workshop, telling me, "This, my little firefly, is true art. Never let anyone dim your light." Another instance that still stings was when I won the school science fair in 5th grade. I was ecstatic. My project, a small robot I'd built with Grandpa's help, had wowed the judges. I called my parents, bubbling with excitement. Marcus answered, his voice impatient. "Emily, I'm in the middle of a deposition. Can this wait?" I mumbled my news. "Oh, good for you," he said, his tone flat, before quickly ending the call. There was no praise, no curiosity, just a dismissal. Grandma May, on the other hand, threw a mini celebration for me, complete with a homemade cake and a Young Scientist of the Year banner she'd painted herself. Then there was Leo, my younger brother by 3 years. Leo was different. He wasn't particularly bright or ambitious, but he was their son, their heir in a way, I their daughter who was an accident. A truth I'd later learn in the most brutal way never could be. While my achievements were met with indifference, Leo's slightest endeavors were celebrated with absurd fanfare. He'd get a C on a test and they'd praise his effort. He'd kick a ball vaguely in the direction of a goal, and Marcus would declare him a future soccer star. The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was a glaring spotlight on Leo, leaving me perpetually in the shadows. I recall one Christmas I received a generic sweater, clearly an afterthought, while Leo was showered with the latest gadgets and designer clothes. The injustice of it all began to chip away at my young heart, planting seeds of resentment I tried hard to ignore. My parents saw my grandparents as convenient free childcare. They'd drop me off on Sunday evenings and pick me up on Friday nights, sometimes not even bothering to come upstairs, just a honk of the car horn signaling their arrival. I'd watch them from the window, their faces illuminated by their phone screens already disconnected before they'd even driven away. Those brief car rides to their sterile Manhattan apartment were filled with an unnerving silence, or worse, hushed, tense arguments about money and work. I felt like an unwelcome passenger in their high-speed, high-stakes lives. The truth is my early potential, my burgeoning talent in mathematics and science. The very things that make me who I am today were not just ignored by Marcus and Sophia. They were actively discouraged if they threatened to inconvenience their meticulously scheduled lives. "Emily, don't be such a nerd," Sophia would say, with a dismissive wave of her hand when I tried to share something I'd learned. "Focus on being presentable." Marcus was even blunter. "Your grandfather fills your head with nonsense. You need to be practical. Marry well." But in the loving cocoon of my grandparents' home in Brooklyn, I thrived. Wong's Wooden Wonders became my playground, my school, my sanctuary. Grandpa Harold taught me about structural integrity, not just in buildings, but in life. Grandma May taught me about the power of stories, not just in books, but in shaping your own destiny. They were my true north, the unwavering constants in my young, often confusing life. And for a while, their love was enough to shield me from the chilling indifference of the two people who were supposed to love me most. But as I grew older, the shield began to crack. The years between childhood and adolescence were marked by a relentless, repeating cycle of disappointment, each instance a fresh layer of callous on my heart. My parents' neglect wasn't a passive thing. It was an active, consistent pattern, a drumbeat of insignificance that echoed through my formative years. Milestones that should have been celebrated, achievements that should have brought pride, were met with the same chilling indifference, or worse, outright dismissal. I remember my 8th grade graduation. I was the valedictorian. I'd poured my heart into my speech, a tribute to the power of dreams and the importance of kindness, lessons learned at my grandparents' knees. Grandma May and Grandpa Harold were in the front row, their faces beaming with pride, tears glistening in Grandma May's eyes. My parents, Marcus and Sophia. They arrived late, slipping into the back of the auditorium just as I was finishing. They missed the entire thing. Later, at the small celebratory dinner my grandparents hosted at our favorite neighborhood Italian restaurant, Sophia spent most of the time on her phone fielding calls about a new high-rise project. Marcus, after a perfunctory "well done." Emily launched into a lengthy monologue about a recent courtroom victory, completely oblivious to the occasion. Leo, who had just scraped through 8th grade with minimal effort, received a brand new gaming console for his hard work. I got a polite nod. My internal monologue during those years was a battlefield. Maybe if I try harder, they'll notice me, a hopeful voice would whisper. But then the evidence would mount, and a darker, more cynical thought would take root. They don't care. They'll never care. There's something wrong with me. I'd look at Leo effortlessly, basking in their attention, and the unfairness of it all would churn in my stomach like a bitter acid. He wasn't a bad kid, really. Just average. Yet in their eyes, he was golden. His mediocre report cards were framed. My straight A's were relegated to a drawer. His clumsy attempts at painting were hailed as budding artistry. My intricate sketches were a nice hobby, dear, but not very practical. One particularly painful dialogue scene unfolded when I was 14. I'd won a regional coding competition, a significant achievement that came with a small scholarship and a chance to attend a prestigious summer tech camp. I was ecstatic, envisioning this as a stepping stone to my dream of studying computer science. I nervously approached my parents during one of their rare weekend visits. Mom, Dad. I began clutching the award letter. I won the coding competition, and I got into this amazing summer camp. Sophia barely looked up from her fashion magazine. Oh, that's nice, Emily. But summer is for family vacations. We were thinking of the Hamptons, but this is a huge opportunity, I pressed, my voice trembling slightly. It could help me get into a good college for computer science. Marcus snorted from behind his newspaper. Computer science, Emily, be realistic. That's not a field for you. You should be thinking about something more suitable. Law, perhaps, or at least marry someone successful. He winked at Leo, who was sprawled on the couch engrossed in a video game. Leo here, he's got the right idea. Networking, making connections. That's what matters. But I'm good at it, I insisted, tears welling in my eyes. Grandpa Harold says, Your grandfather? Sophia interrupted her voice. Sharp fills your head with sentimental nonsense. We know what's best for you, Emily. This tech camp thing is out of the question. You'll come to the Hamptons with us and Leo, and try to be a bit more sociable, less intense. The words less intense felt like a dagger. My passion, my drive, the very things my grandparents nurtured were seen as flaws by my own parents. I fled to my room, the award letter crinkling in my clenched fist, the familiar ache of rejection settling heavily in my chest. That summer, I didn't go to the Hamptons. My grandparents, bless their hearts, used their savings to send me to a local coding workshop in Brooklyn instead. It wasn't the prestigious camp, but it was something, and it was a stark contrast to the hollow family time my parents offered. Amidst this emotional desert, there were oases of support. My grandparents, of course, were my unwavering anchors. Then there was Mrs. Rodriguez, my high school math teacher, a fiery woman with a passion for numbers and a keen eye for potential. She saw my talent and pushed me, encouraged me to join the math club, to participate in competitions. Don't let anyone tell you what you can or cannot do, Emily, she'd say, her dark eyes flashing. You have a gift. Use it. Her belief in me was a lifeline. My best friend Sarah, also from Park Slope, was another pillar of strength. Her family was loud, chaotic, and brimming with affection. Everything mine wasn't. Sarah understood, in a way no one else my age could, the peculiar brand of loneliness that came with having parents who were physically present but emotionally absent. We'd spend hours in Wong's Wooden Wonders sharing dreams and frustrations, Grandpa Harold occasionally chiming in with a piece of sage advice or a comforting smile. The pattern of disappointment continued relentlessly. My 16th birthday was marked by a generic gift card, while Leo's 13th birthday, a few months later, was a lavish affair, a party with a DJ and 100 guests. Each dismissal, each act of blatant favoritism chipped away at me, but it also slowly began to forge something else within me, a quiet resilience, a simmering anger, and a fierce determination to prove them wrong. The most recent major disappointment, the one that felt like a final brutal blow before everything changed, was my application to a highly competitive pre-college summer program at MIT. I'd worked tirelessly on my application, my essays, my project submission. Mrs. Rodriguez had written me a glowing recommendation. I dared to hope to dream. When the acceptance letter arrived, I was over the moon. I thought they had to acknowledge. I showed it to them during another of their brief, perfunctory visits. Sophia scanned the letter, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows arching slightly. MIT, isn't that very intense, Emily? And so far away. Marcus grunted. Expensive, more like. And what's the point? It's just a summer program. He then turned to Leo, who was complaining about his outdated phone. Don't worry, son, we'll get you the new iPhone next week. The casual cruelty of it, the complete disregard for something that meant the world to me, was staggering. It wasn't just that they didn't care. It felt like they actively wanted to crush my aspirations to keep me small and insignificant. That night, I cried in Grandma May's arms, the carefully constructed walls around my heart threatening to crumble. Little did I know this was just the beginning. The foundation of my world, the love and security my grandparents provided, was about to be shaken to its core, and the simmering anger within me was about to find its voice. The disappointment over the MIT program was a heavy blow, but what followed plunged me into a darkness I'd never known. The escalating conflict wasn't just with my parents anymore. It was with fate itself, and it was pushing me towards an unavoidable breaking point. The first wave of escalation came subtly. Grandpa Harold, my rock, my quiet confidant, started to grow frail. His once strong hands, capable of coaxing beauty from stubborn wood, now trembled slightly. He tired easily, and the spark in his eyes, though still there, flickered more often. Grandma May tried to shield me from the worst of it, her smile a little too bright, her reassurances a little too quick. But I saw the worry lines deepening around her eyes. Wong's Wooden Wonders, once a bustling hub of creativity, grew quieter. My heart ached with a premonition I couldn't articulate. The second wave was the trigger event itself, the moment that shattered the last vestiges of my childhood innocence. I was 12, not yet the hardened teenager I would become, still clinging to a sliver of hope that my parents might one day see me. It was a sweltering summer evening. My parents had come to Brooklyn for one of their rare obligatory dinners. I was supposed to be in my room reading, but the raised voices from the living room, sharp and laced with an unfamiliar venom, drew me to the top of the stairs. I sat there, hidden in the shadows, listening. We can't keep doing this. Harold Sophia's voice, usually so controlled, was shrill. She's your granddaughter, yes, but she's also an anchor. Our careers are finally taking off. We have opportunities. She holds us back. An anchor. Grandpa Harold's voice, though weaker than I remembered, boomed with indignation. She's a child, Sophia. Your child, a child you barely acknowledge. Let's be honest, Harold. Marcus cut in his tone, cold and cutting. We never wanted to be parents. Sophia was on the verge of a major promotion. We even considered options. A chilling silence hung in the air, broken only by Grandma May's soft sob. My blood ran cold. Options. Did they mean you gamble away your money on ridiculous investments, Marcus, and then you blame Emily for your financial irresponsibility? Grandpa Harold's voice was filled with contempt. You've squandered any chance of providing for her future, and now you resent her very existence. She's a burden, Sophia shrieked, a constant reminder of a mistake. We pay for her upkeep. Isn't that enough? I didn't hear any more. I stumbled back to my room, my heart hammering against my ribs, the words anchor burden mistake echoing in my head. The world tilted on its axis. It wasn't just indifference I was facing, it was outright rejection, a fundamental denial of my right to exist in their lives. That night, something inside me broke, but something else, something hard and resilient, began to form in its place. The illusion of my parents, however faint, was gone forever. From that day on, I saw them for who they truly were, selfish, shallow, and incapable of love, at least for me. My grandparents never spoke of that argument, and I never told them I'd overheard. But the knowledge festered within me, a toxic secret that colored every interaction, every forced smile, every hollow compliment from Marcus and Sophia. The third wave of escalation was my parents' increasing financial recklessness, which Grandpa Harold had alluded to. Whispers of failed business ventures, risky stock market gambles, and extravagant spending reached even my ears. They maintained their lavish lifestyle, the Manhattan penthouse, the designer clothes, the flashy cars, but there was a desperate edge to their pursuit of wealth, a sense of always chasing something just out of reach. This I would later realize was a crucial part of their motivation. They weren't just neglectful, they were becoming desperate. Looking back, I can try to piece together some backstory for my parents' motivations, not to excuse them, but to understand the twisted roots of their behavior. Sophia came from a family that valued appearances above all else. Her own mother was a notorious social climber who had drilled into her the importance of marrying well and achieving status. Marcus, on the other hand, grew up in the shadow of a domineering father who constantly belittled his achievements. His relentless pursuit of success and money was likely a desperate attempt to prove his worth, to fill a void that could never be filled. They were both broken people in their own ways, chasing external validation because they lacked any internal sense of self-worth. And I, their unwanted child, was a constant inconvenient reminder of a life they felt had been imposed upon them. Leo, being the boy and younger, perhaps fit better into their later, more curated image of a perfect family. Or maybe he was simply easier to mold. The fourth wave, and the most devastating, was the sudden tragic loss of my grandparents. I was 15. A drunk driver, a senseless accident, and just like that, my entire world imploded. One moment, I was safe in their love, shielded from the worst of my parents' toxicity. The next, I was adrift in a sea of grief, the ground beneath my feet, gone. The funeral was a blur of faces, hushed condolences, and the crushing weight of finality. Marcus and Sophia were there, of course, playing the part of grieving daughter and son-in-law, their sorrow, performative and hollow. I saw through it, and the sight filled me with a cold, burning rage. With my grandparents gone, I was forced to move into their Manhattan apartment. The transition was brutal. Their home, once a symbol of everything I craved, status, luxury, parental presence, became my prison. It was a gilded cage filled with expensive furniture and empty silences. Leo, now a teenager himself, was mostly oblivious, lost in his own world of friends and video games. My parents were rarely home, and when they were, they treated me like an inconvenient piece of furniture, a ghost haunting their perfect lives. The loneliness was suffocating. My grades started to slip. The spark that Grandma May had so carefully nurtured began to dim. I felt myself retreating, building walls around my shattered heart. But even in that desolate landscape, a new opportunity, a flicker of hope began to emerge. My 18th birthday was approaching, and with it the prospect of college, of escape. I clung to that hope, studying with a renewed ferocity, dreaming of a life far away from my parents' suffocating presence, a life where I could pursue my passion for computer science, a life my grandparents would have been proud of. I started researching universities in California, drawn by their renowned tech programs and the promise of a fresh start. My internal transformation, long dormant, began to stir. The grief, the anger, the years of accumulated pain started to coalesce into a steely resolve. I would not let them break me. I would not become the insignificant, resentful person they seemed determined to make me. I would honor my grandparents' memory by living a life of purpose and integrity. Allies and enemies became clearer than ever. My parents were undeniably my antagonists. Mr. Goldstein, my grandfather's lawyer, a kind elderly man I'd met a few times with, the Grandpa Harold, reached out after the funeral, expressing his condolences and offering his assistance if I ever needed anything. He felt like a potential ally, a link to my grandparents' love and foresight. Sarah, my best friend, remained a constant source of support, her calls and texts a lifeline in my isolation. Mrs. Rodriguez, too, checked in on me, her belief in my potential unwavering. The stakes were raised to their highest yet. My future, my education, my very identity were on the line. As my 18th birthday loomed, I knew a confrontation was inevitable. My parents had made vague promises about college, but their track record filled me with dread. And then the cliffhanger, the event that would set the stage for the ultimate revelation and my fight for freedom. A week before my 18th birthday, I overheard my parents in their study. Their voices were low, conspiratorial. The college fund Harold and May left for her, Sophia, was saying, "It's a substantial amount. We could really use it right now with the market being what it is." Marcus grunted in agreement. "She doesn't need that much for some state school. And honestly, a girl like Emily, what's the point of a fancy degree anyway? She'll probably just get married." My blood turned to ice. They weren't just going to refuse to pay for college. They were planning to take the money my grandparents had lovingly saved for me. My grandparents' legacy. My only hope for escape. At that moment, something inside me snapped. The grief, the anger, the years of silent suffering, it all crystallized into a single burning purpose. They would not win. I would fight for my future, for my grandparents' memory, for myself. Little did they know a storm was coming, and I was ready to unleash it. The truth, the one I'd carried for years, was about to become my weapon. The week leading up to my 18th birthday was a blur of feigned normalcy and simmering rage. My parents' hushed conversation about my grandparents' college fund replayed in my mind like a broken record, each word a fresh stab of betrayal. The knowledge that they would stoop so low to steal from their own daughter from the memory of the very people who had sheltered and loved me when they wouldn't filled me with a cold, hard fury I'd never experienced before. This wasn't just about money. It was about defiance, about justice for my grandparents, and about reclaiming my own life from their suffocating grip. My 18th birthday arrived with little fanfare. A perfunctory happy birthday from Marcus as he rushed off to work a designer scarf left on my bed from Sophia, no doubt chosen by her assistant, and a hollow feeling in the pit of my stomach. Leo mumbled a greeting before disappearing into his room. The loneliness of that Manhattan penthouse felt more acute than ever. But beneath the surface, a plan was beginning to form, a desperate, determined resolve to fight back. Later that evening, my parents sat me down in their opulent living room, the city lights twinkling mockingly outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading yet somehow also anticipating. Sophia began, her voice smooth and practiced like she was delivering a closing argument. "Emily, darling, we need to talk about your future. College, specifically." Marcus chimed in, leaning back in his expensive leather armchair, exuding an air of magnanimity that made my skin crawl. "We've always wanted what's best for you, you know that. And while we admire your ambition, we've been looking at our finances, and frankly, a 4-year university, especially out of state, is just not feasible right now." "Not feasible," I repeated, my voice surprisingly steady, "or just not a priority for me." Sophia's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Now, Emily, don't be dramatic. We're simply saying you need to be realistic. Perhaps a community college, or maybe take a gap year, find a little job. And what about the money Grandpa Harold and Grandma May left for my education?" I asked, my gaze unwavering. A flicker of surprise, then annoyance, crossed Marcus's face. "Oh, that," he said dismissively. "That was a small amount, really. And it's been absorbed into the family finances, for everyone's benefit." Absorbed, I pressed, the anger rising hot and sharp. "You mean stolen?" Sophia gasped, feigning outrage. "Emily, how dare you accuse us of such a thing? We are your parents. We would never—" But I wasn't listening to their carefully constructed lies anymore. The game had changed, and it was about to change even more dramatically. The very next day, a crisp, official-looking envelope arrived for me. It was from Goldstein and Associates, attorneys at law. Mr. Goldstein, my grandfather's lawyer. My heart pounded as I tore it open. Inside was a letter requesting my presence at his office at my earliest convenience to discuss a matter pertaining to the estate of Harold Wong. A new perspective, a game-changing piece of information was about to be handed to me. The timing felt like an intervention from my grandparents themselves. I met Mr. Goldstein a few days later in his quiet, book-lined office in a historic building downtown. He was exactly as I remembered him. Kind eyes, a gentle demeanor, but with an underlying sharpness that hinted at a formidable legal mind. He offered me tea and condolences for my grandparents. His sincerity, a stark contrast to my parents' hollow words. Then he got to the point. "Emily," he began, his voice soft but firm, "your grandfather was a very wise and far-sighted man. He loved you dearly, more than words can say." He paused, then continued. "He was also aware of certain family dynamics." Mr. Goldstein then revealed the truth bomb. Grandpa Harold, anticipating my parents' potential irresponsibility and selfishness, had set up a secret trust fund for me years ago. A substantial trust fund specifically earmarked for my education and to help me establish my independence. He had made Mr. Goldstein the sole trustee with explicit instructions that the funds were to be released to me upon my 18th birthday, and only to me. My parents had no legal access to it, no claim whatsoever. The revelation hit me like a physical blow, but this time it was a blow of overwhelming relief, gratitude, and a fierce surging hope. Tears streamed down my face, tears of sorrow for my grandparents' absence, but also tears of profound love for their unwavering foresight and protection even from beyond the grave. My grandfather hadn't just left me money. He'd left me a lifeline, a way out, a chance to build the future he and Grandma May had always envisioned for me. "He wanted you to have this." "Emily," Mr. Goldstein said, gently handing me a folder containing the trust documents, "he wanted you to be free to pursue your dreams without any hindrance." He then informed me that my parents had indeed made inquiries about Emily's inheritance shortly after my grandparents' death, and he had politely but firmly rebuffed them, citing the terms of the trust. Their recent conversation about absorbing the funds was pure fabrication, a desperate attempt to manipulate me out of money they couldn't touch. The mental shift was instantaneous. The victim narrative I had unknowingly subscribed to for years shattered. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't dependent on their whims. I had agency. I had resources. I had the backing of my grandfather's love and his lawyer's expertise. My emotional processing of this new information was a whirlwind. Grief, gratitude, anger, empowerment, all swirled within me. The anger wasn't the helpless, despairing kind anymore. It was a focused, righteous anger, the kind that fuels action. The decision to take action was immediate and unequivocal. I would not let their lies stand. I would not let them continue to diminish me. I would confront them not just with the truth of their neglect, but with the undeniable proof of their deceit and my newfound independence. The planning and preparation phase began. Mr. Goldstein was invaluable, guiding me through the legalities, helping me understand my rights, and strategizing the best way to handle the inevitable confrontation. He advised me to secure access to the trust funds immediately and to make arrangements for my departure from my parents' apartment. He also suggested having a witness present during the confrontation if possible to prevent them from twisting the narrative later. I thought about who that witness could be. Sarah, perhaps, or Mrs. Rodriguez. But then I realized the most impactful witnesses would be the ones whose opinions my parents actually cared about. Their peers, their social circle. The idea was terrifying, but also exhilarating. The image of their carefully constructed facade, crumbling before an audience of their own making, was undeniably appealing. The anticipation for the confrontation built with each passing day. It wasn't just about escaping, it was about reclaiming my voice, my story, my power. My grandparents had given me the tools. Now it was time for me to build my own future on my own terms. The girl who cried herself to sleep, wondering why she wasn't loved, was gone. In her place stood a young woman armed with the truth and the unwavering love of her grandparents, ready to face her demons and claim her destiny. This wasn't just a truth bomb, it was my declaration of independence. The stage for the confrontation was set not in the sterile silence of my parents' Manhattan penthouse, but at a place where their public image was paramount, their annual charity gala. Marcus and Sophia Chan prided themselves on their philanthropy, or rather, the appearance of it. This gala was their crowning social event attended by their high-powered colleagues, influential clients, and the city's elite. It was the perfect, albeit terrifying arena for the truth to be unveiled. Mr. Goldstein, initially hesitant about such a public display, eventually agreed it might be the most effective way to ensure my parents couldn't simply dismiss or distort what happened. He would be there, a silent, legal guardian angel. I spent weeks meticulously planning every detail with Mr. Goldstein's guidance. I secured my access to the trust fund, found a small apartment in Brooklyn, near where I grew up, and even arranged for movers. The hardest part was steeling my nerves. The thought of confronting my parents, the people who held such psychological power over me for so long in front of hundreds of people, was nauseating. But then I'd remember Grandpa Harold's steady gaze, Grandma May's encouraging smile, and the burning injustice of their actions, and my resolve would solidify. The night of the gala arrived. I wore a simple, elegant dress, one I'd bought myself with the first small withdrawal from my trust. It felt symbolic, my first act of true independence. Walking into that glittering ballroom filled with a sea of designer gowns and tuxedos, my heart hammered against my ribs. I spotted Marcus and Sophia near the entrance schmoozing with a prominent city councilman, their smiles wide and artificial. Leo was there too, looking bored and out of place in an ill-fitting suit. Mr. Goldstein gave me a reassuring nod from across the room. I took a deep breath. Showtime. I waited for the opportune moment, right after Marcus had finished a self-congratulatory speech about their family's commitment to community and integrity. The applause was still echoing when I stepped forward, my voice clear and steady, amplified slightly by a nearby microphone I discreetly approached. "Excuse me, everyone," I began. A hush fell over the room. Heads turned. Marcus and Sophia froze their smiles, wavering as they saw me. My name is Emily Chan. And while my father, Marcus Chan, speaks eloquently about integrity, I feel compelled to share a slightly different perspective on his and my mother, Sophia Chan's, family values. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. My parents' faces turned ashen. Marcus started towards me, his eyes blazing, but Mr. Goldstein subtly stepped into his path, a silent warning. For 18 years, I continued, my voice gaining strength. I was raised primarily by my maternal grandparents, Harold and May Wong, wonderful, loving people who taught me the true meaning of family. My parents, Marcus and Sophia, were largely absent, focused on their careers, and apparently on how much of a burden I was to them. I saw Sophia clutch Marcus's arm, her knuckles white. The whispers in the room grew louder. I know this because at the tender age of 12, I overheard them confessing it. I heard them say they never wanted me, that they even considered options to prevent my birth. I heard them call me an anchor, holding back their ambitions. I paused, letting the words sink in, watching the shock register on the faces of their friends and colleagues. I also heard my grandfather accuse my father of gambling away my future with failed investments. Marcus finally found his voice, sputtering, "This is outrageous. She's unwell. She doesn't know what she's saying." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm saying." "Father," I replied, my gaze locking with his, "and I have more to share. After my beloved grandparents tragically passed away, I was forced to live with you. A period of profound loneliness and neglect. On my 18th birthday, you informed me that you wouldn't be paying for my college education. You claimed financial hardship. I let that hang in the air for a moment, the irony thick given the lavishness of the event. And then I continued, my voice ringing with a newfound power. You told me that the college fund my grandparents had painstakingly saved for me had been absorbed into the family finances. You planned to steal it, my grandparents' legacy, my only hope for a future. This time, the reaction was more pronounced. Murmurs of disbelief and disgust spread through the room. People were looking at Marcus and Sophia with expressions ranging from shock to contempt. Their carefully crafted facade was shattering piece by piece. Fortunately for me, I announced, a small, triumphant smile playing on my lips. My grandfather was a wise man. He knew you. He knew your character. And he protected me. I gestured towards Mr. Goldstein. Mr. Goldstein, my grandfather's lawyer, can attest to this. Grandpa Harold set up a secret trust fund for my education and independence, a trust fund you have absolutely no access to. He ensured I would have the future you tried to deny me, Mr. Goldstein stepped forward slightly. Everything Ms. Chan has stated regarding the trust established by her grandfather, Mr. Harold Wong, is accurate and legally documented. He confirmed, his voice calm and authoritative. The power dynamic in that room had completely reversed. I was no longer the invisible, insignificant daughter. I was the one holding all the cards, the one speaking the undeniable truth. My parents stood there, exposed, their faces a mixture of fury, humiliation, and dawning panic. Sophia looked like she was about to faint. Marcus's jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth would shatter. "So you see," I said, my voice softening slightly but losing none of its firmness, "while you preach about integrity and community, your own actions toward your daughter paint a very different picture. A picture of profound emotional neglect, materialism, and selfishness." I then looked directly at Leo. He looked stunned, his eyes wide, a flicker of something unreadable, shame, confusion in their depths. For the first time, he seemed to be seeing his parents, and perhaps his own privileged position, in a new, harsh light. He didn't say anything, just stared at the floor. My parents, predictably, had a meltdown. Sophia burst into tears, crocodile tears, I suspected, muttering about how ungrateful I was, how I was twisting everything. Marcus started yelling, calling me a liar, threatening to... Well, I'm not sure what he could threaten me with anymore. The truth was out. Their masks were off. Their audience, their precious social circle, was witnessing their complete and utter unraveling. The public humiliation was palpable. People were backing away from them, whispering amongst themselves. The councilman they'd been fawning over earlier looked deeply uncomfortable and made a hasty retreat. Some of their closest friends suddenly seemed very interested in the canapes on the other side of the room. My moment of triumph wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about liberation. It was about finally speaking my truth, a truth that had been silenced for far too long. It was about honoring my grandparents who had armed me with the means to fight this battle. "I'm not saying this to ruin your lives," I concluded, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Although you did your best to ruin mine. I'm saying this because I will no longer be your victim. I am taking control of my own life, my own future. A future built on honesty, integrity, and the love my grandparents showed me. Something you clearly know nothing about." With that, I turned and walked away, Mr. Goldstein by my side. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The satisfying echo of shocked silence, punctuated by my mother's theatrical sobs and my father's impotent rage, was justice enough. It was a 5-course meal of karma served cold in the most public way imaginable. And as I stepped out of that opulent ballroom and into the cool night air, I felt lighter than I had in years. The truth hadn't just set me free, it had rebuilt me stronger and more determined than ever. The fallout from the charity gala confrontation was immediate and spectacular. Like a bomb detonating in the heart of their carefully curated world, the echoes of my revelations reverberated through Marcus and Sophia Chan's social and professional circles with astonishing speed. Karma, it turned out, didn't just come for them. It brought an entire army of consequences. The immediate consequence, even before I'd reached my new, modest Brooklyn apartment that night, was the flurry of texts and calls lighting up Mr. Goldstein's phone. Apparently, several prominent guests at the gala, including some of Marcus's key clients and Sophia's influential connections in the architecture world, were demanding explanations, expressing their disappointment and concern. The carefully constructed image of the perfect power couple, the philanthropists with hearts of gold, had been irrevocably shattered. My parents' attempts at damage control were frantic and clumsy. The day after the gala, a statement was released by their newly hired PR firm, a desperate scramble to salvage their reputations. It painted me as a troubled, ungrateful young woman, manipulated by outside influences, a clear jab at Mr. Goldstein, and by extension my beloved grandparents, and suffering from emotional instability due to my grandparents' passing. They claimed my accusations were wild fabrications, born of grief and a desire for attention. But the seeds of doubt had been sown, and my calm, factual delivery, backed by the quiet authority of Mr. Goldstein, had lent my words a powerful credibility. Their statement reeking of desperation and deflection only seemed to make things worse. People remembered the raw honesty in my voice, the pained look in my eyes, and contrasted it with Marcus's sputtering rage and Sophia's theatrical hysterics. My firm response when a sleazy tabloid reporter managed to track me down was simple and unwavering. The truth I stated calmly. My grandparents' love and foresight have given me the means to build an independent life based on the values they instilled in me: honesty and integrity. I wish my parents well in their own journey towards understanding those values. I refused to engage in a mudslinging match. I had spoken my piece. The rest was up to them and their conscience if they had any. Support came from some unexpected allies. Mrs. Rodriguez, my former math teacher, called me, her voice filled with pride. "Emily, I always knew you were a fighter. You did what you had to do. Your grandparents would be so proud. Sarah." My best friend was my rock, helping me settle into my new apartment, bringing over pizza and movies, and reminding me that I wasn't alone. More surprisingly, a few distant relatives, people who had always kept a polite distance from Marcus and Sophia's brand of ambition, reached out. An aunt, my mother's estranged sister, sent me a heartfelt letter sharing her own difficult experiences with Sophia's narcissism and offering her support. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me, a reminder that not everyone in my extended family was blind to my parents' true nature. The social media and community reactions, though I tried to shield myself from the worst of it, were intense. Snippets of my speech, likely recorded by guests, began circulating online. The story tapped into a raw nerve. The pain of parental neglect, the fight for recognition, the David and Goliath triumph of an underdog. Hashtags like Chan family drama and hashtag truth speaker Emily started trending locally. While some comments were inevitably vile, the overwhelming majority were supportive people sharing their own stories of family struggles and cheering me on. It was a strange, disembodying experience to see my private pain become a public spectacle, but it also fostered a sense of solidarity, a feeling that I wasn't as alone as I'd once believed. The short-term changes in my family dynamics were seismic. My parents, consumed by their public relations nightmare, made no attempt to contact me directly, save for a single scathing email from Marcus filled with threats and accusations which Mr. Goldstein advised me to ignore. Leo, however, did reach out. He sent me a hesitant, awkward text a few days later. "Emily, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I never really saw." It wasn't an apology that erased years of obliviousness, but it was a crack in the wall, a hint of dawning awareness. I replied cautiously, acknowledging his message, but making it clear that rebuilding any sort of relationship would take time and genuine effort on his part. My emotional processing of the victory was complex. There was elation, certainly a profound sense of liberation. The heavy weight I'd carried for so long had finally been lifted. But there was also a lingering sadness, a grief for the parents I never had for the family that could never be. Triumph was tinged with the sorrow of what was irrevocably broken, yet overriding it all was a burgeoning sense of peace and a quiet, fierce pride. I had faced my biggest fear, spoken my truth, and emerged not just unscathed, but stronger. In the weeks that followed, I focused on setting up my new life. I enrolled in community college for the semester, taking prerequisite courses for computer science, with a plan to transfer to a top university in California as soon as possible. I found a part-time job at a local bookstore surrounded by the comforting scent of paper and ink, a world away from the toxic glamour of my parents' life. I reconnected with the familiar rhythms of Brooklyn, the warmth of its diverse community, the grounding presence of places that held happy memories of my grandparents. The battle was won, but the war for my own happiness and fulfillment was just beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly ready for it, armed with my grandparents' love, my own resilience, and the unshakable knowledge of my own worth. Justice had been served not just in the public humiliation of my antagonists, but in my own quiet, determined steps towards a brighter future. 3 years. 3 transformative years had passed since that explosive night at the charity gala. The dust had long settled, and in its place a new landscape had emerged, one I had meticulously cultivated, brick by brick, code by code. My life was almost unrecognizable from the suffocating existence I'd endured in my parents' Manhattan penthouse. I was now a recent graduate from a prestigious university in California, a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science clutched proudly in my hand, my academic record gleaming with honors. The trust fund my grandfather had so wisely established had allowed me to focus entirely on my studies, to dive deep into the world of algorithms, artificial intelligence, and software development. The very field my parents had dismissed as unsuitable and too intense. The intensity, it turned out, was my superpower. And just last month, I'd accepted a dream job offer from a leading tech company in Silicon Valley, a place where innovation thrived, and merit, not connections, was what truly mattered. I was finally Emily Chan, tech professional, standing on my own 2 feet, the architect of my own destiny. The current status of my antagonists, Marcus and Sophia Chan, was a testament to the old adage, what goes around doesn't just come around, it multiplies. Their public humiliation at the gala had been just the beginning. The story, despite their best efforts to suppress it, had lingered, chipping away at their carefully constructed reputations. Marcus's legal practice suffered a significant blow. Several high-profile clients, uncomfortable with the cloud of scandal surrounding him, had quietly taken their business elsewhere. His aggressive courtroom persona now seemed less like brilliance and more like bullying. Sophia's architectural firm also faced repercussions. Projects were mysteriously delayed or canceled, her social standing plummeted, and the invitations to exclusive events dried up. They were still wealthy, still living in their Manhattan penthouse, but their world had shrunk considerably. They were isolated, viewed with suspicion and a touch of pity by their former peers. The perfect power couple had become a cautionary tale. Karma didn't just come for them. It brought an entire army of social and professional consequences. Justice wasn't just served. It was a 5-course meal they were forced to eat slowly for years. The family dynamics had, of course, completely changed. I maintained a strict no-contact policy with my parents. There were a few half-hearted attempts on their part, usually around holidays, to reach out. Carefully worded cards, impersonal gifts, but I returned them unopened. The wounds they inflicted were too deep, their lack of genuine remorse too glaring. Forgiveness might come one day, perhaps, but reconciliation felt impossible. My peace and self-worth were too precious to risk. Leo, my brother, was a different story. The gala had been a brutal wake-up call for him. Over the past 3 years, he'd slowly, painstakingly begun to shed the entitled persona his parents had cultivated in him. He'd reached out more consistently, his apologies more sincere. He'd even started therapy, trying to understand the dysfunctional family system he'd grown up in. We weren't close, not in the traditional sense, but we had found a tentative, fragile truce. He visited me once in California, and I saw a young man struggling to find his own path to define himself outside of his parents' shadow. There was hope for him, I realized, and for that I was grateful. My new relationships and support systems were built on a foundation of authenticity and mutual respect. In California, I found a chosen family, a diverse group of friends from university fellow coders, dreamers, and achievers who celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges. Sarah remained my steadfast best friend, our bond strengthened by distance and shared history. And Mr. Goldstein, bless his heart, continued to be a mentor and a grandfatherly figure in my life, always just a phone call away, his pride in my accomplishments, a warm, comforting presence. I even started volunteering at a local coding camp for underprivileged girls, inspired by Grandma May and Mrs. Rodriguez, determined to pay forward the encouragement I had received. My professional and personal growth achievements were significant. Beyond the degree and the job, I had rediscovered my confidence, my voice, my joy. I was no longer the timid, overshadowed girl. I was assertive, articulate, and passionate. I hiked in Yosemite, learned to surf badly, but with enthusiasm, and filled my small apartment with books, plants, and the lingering scent of good coffee, a sanctuary of my own making. Reflecting on my journey, the lessons learned were profound. I learned that true family isn't always about blood. It's about love, support, and acceptance. I learned that self-worth comes from within, not from the validation of others. I learned that even in the darkest of times, hope can flicker, and that fighting for your dreams, for your truth, is always worth it. And perhaps, most importantly, I learned that the legacy of love, the kind my grandparents had given me, is a powerful, enduring force, capable of transcending even death, capable of lighting the way forward. Wong's Wooden Wonders was long gone, but its spirit lived on in the sturdy, beautiful life I was building for myself. So what's the deep moral of my story? It's not just about escaping a toxic family or winning a fight for an inheritance. It's about the fierce, unyielding power of self-worth and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. It's about understanding that you are not defined by those who refuse to see your light. You are defined by how brightly you choose to shine anyway. The first lesson is this: your value is inherent. It doesn't diminish based on someone's inability to see it. The second lesson, the truth, no matter how painful or long buried, has a way of setting you free. It might be a difficult journey to unearth it and speak it, but silence is a far heavier burden to carry. And finally, never underestimate the enduring impact of genuine love and support. My grandparents' love was my shield, my compass, and ultimately my greatest inheritance. Seek out and nurture those relationships that lift you up and believe in your potential. Have you ever felt like you had to fight for your own voice to be heard in your family? Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Share your experiences in the comments below. Let's build a community where we can support each other through these tough but transformative journeys. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever been the forgotten child or the underestimated underdog, please hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of triumph and resilience, and share this with anyone who might need to hear it. Remember, you deserve to be seen, heard, and cherished for exactly who you are. Your story matters. I'll be sharing more about my journey, including how I navigated building a new life from scratch and tips for anyone facing similar struggles. So make sure you're subscribed. Thank you for listening. You are stronger than you think.